Good afternoon, class. We are Group 5, and we're going to be talking about TD Bank and having more of a in-depth analysis on what they do and some recommendations and implementations. The agenda we have prepared goes through the presentation and the things we're going to be talking about in order. To start off, we're going to have a brief introduction of TD Bank and what they do, followed by the company overview, followed by the company and industry analysis. And then after that, we will be talking about the problem statement, some strategic alternatives we could provide them, and recommendations and implementation plans, followed by the summary and conclusion statement. I'm going to just give a brief introduction on what TD Bank does and some facts about them. They are one of the top 10 banks in North America. They're headquartered in Toronto, and they have banks in Canada and as well as the US. They offer a large number of services, certain financial products, and they have more than 7.9 million customers worldwide. And their sales has come in at 5.054 billion. So I'm going to pass it over to Samantha for the company overview.
Alrighty, so for the company overview, I'd like to start with our generic competitive strategy. And the one that TD uses is differentiation. So they aim to stand out from their peers by differentiating their brand. And they do this by being very process-driven and forward-focused. So always looking to where they can change and adapt. And they also have a very detailed framework that embodies their culture and lets them know how they should behave to work towards strategic execution. And their whole vision is to be the better bank. And their purpose is to enrich the lives of customers and communities as well as colleagues. And they also do this with the framework of inclusion, innovation, and development. Their business model is constantly striving towards earning growth and avoiding strong risk. And it includes four key business lines. And these business lines are mainly the Canadian personal and commercial banking, the US retail, which they have recently branched off into, wealth management and insurance, and wholesale banking. So this all didn't happen overnight, and I can get into now a brief history and the critical events. So as mentioned in the intro, TD was founded in 1855, and they were primarily a mortgage company. Throughout time, they continued to expand their financial services, and they got into direct investing, which began as TD Greenline in 1984. And then they continued to acquire different companies that supported their strategic vision for expansion. And one of those was Waterhouse Investor Services, which they picked up in 1996. And so that ended up developing into what we now know as TD Direct Investing. However, in 2024, they did face some legal and financial issues due to an AML scandal. And that's something that continues to affect them to this day. So I will pass it along.
All right, so now we're going to be talking about the company and industry analysis. So first off, TD Bank operates in one of the most competitive banking markets in the world, especially competing against the other big five banks such as RBC, BMO, Scotia, and CIBC. In the Canadian economy, while also competing against rising financial tech companies like Wave Financial or like Wealthsimple, which overall makes them highly competitive. TD Bank stands out by focusing on customer service, innovation, and offering a wide range of financial services under one roof using both in-branch banking and their online banking platform. TD Bank's diversification strategy is really about smart growth and long-term stability. First, they can expand into the US to tap into a bigger market and reduce dependence on the Canadian economy. Second, they connect all their services like banking, investing, and insurance so customers get everything in one place. And the business runs more efficiently, bringing a strategic fit with cross-business services. And third, they invest heavily in technology, from mobile apps to AI, so they can stay ahead of the digital trends and rising fintech companies to offer a better experience for customers. Now I'm going to be passing it over to James, who's going to be continuing with the analysis.
Thank you, Andre. So I'm going to start off with the ethics, sustainability, and CSR strategies. TD has long positioned itself as an organization grounded in ethical behavior, community responsibility, and environmental sustainability. However, the bank's ethical standards were put to the test in 2024 when it was implicated in a significant money laundering scandal that revealed serious shortcomings in their anti-money laundering controls. However, on the environmental front, TD has set a precedent among major Canadian banks by achieving carbon neutrality and actively investing in sustainable finance. They support projects in renewable energy, clean technology, and green building practices, while also working to reduce their operational footprint. Next is the company's structure, along with their allocation of resources and execution strategies. According to Chapter 10, a well-matched organizational structure is essential to support strategy execution. TD likely follows a decentralized structure in its branch network to promote responsiveness to local market conditions, while centralizing key functions like compliance, IT, and risk management. For resource allocation, TD likely uses strategic budgeting to create initiatives such as enhancing digital banking platforms, improving customer experience, or expanding environmental, social, and governance-focused services. And then moving on to the execution strategies, TD's ability to put its strategy into action depends on a few core practices, such as hiring and retaining skilled employees who can drive performance, building internal capabilities through training, technology, and process improvement, implementing systems and tools that help teams work more efficiently. TD's corporate culture is central to how effectively it delivers on its strategy. The organization fosters a culture built on shared values such as integrity, customer service, diversity, and accountability. These cultural norms guide employee behavior and help maintain alignment between day-to-day actions and broader strategic goals. When it comes to their leadership styles, senior leaders are expected to lead by doing. The leaders remain closely involved in the execution process using tools like performance metrics and direct team engagement to monitor progress and drive improvement. Now I'm going to hand it back off to Samantha.
So our group decided to interview Enzo Irulo. He is a senior manager in the software engineering department of TD, and he has over 22 years of experience with that branch. So we also got into the most critical issues that are faced by TD. And he started off by discussing the lack of cash available to spend on resources. This is a big issue, especially in his department, because they don't get to complete the amount of projects that they would like due to budget cuts and not having an adequate supply of employees. And their teams have, where they should have been growing, they've actually stayed the same. And then another big issue is the amount of competition and the difficulty there is keeping up with technology. Technology is always changing. The needs of customers are always changing. And a big issue in the software department of TD is meeting these technology demands as fast, if not faster, than competitors. And then the last one, which we have obviously touched upon throughout this discussion, is the bad publicity and the other issues that have arisen due to the AML scandal. So obviously, TD has had to pay a bunch of fines. Their reputation has been damaged. And not only is this bad in itself, but it is also adding to the previous two problems discussed above. So it's definitely something that TD is working towards and something that is having to be addressed. And now I'll pass it off to how we can recommend that TD do this.
Okay, so I'll be providing 3 different alternatives TD can take to fix the many problems they have, such as lack of resources, the money laundering scandal, and lack of innovative technology. So for alternative 1, I'll be providing the anti-money laundering remediation, which essentially TD needs to rebuild their public image and improve investor trust. They also need to improve their workplace culture and also focus on ethics and transparency. Due to the anti-money laundering scandal, they've had a reputation hits. So that would be one step to dealing with that. The second step is divestitures and acquisitions. So TD would essentially need more capital. So they need to sell off products that they have that they don't necessarily need right now to get more capital, and also it'll allow them to reinvest into their core operations and reduce their risks. Part three would be investing into technology, which is essentially investing into AI and also improving their workflow, but also improving their anti-money laundering technology, because obviously they faced a lot of issues with that, and investing AI into their technology will help provide better protocols to see and stop things from happening ahead of time. I will now be passing it off to Mark to discuss the recommendations.
All right. So based on everything that you all heard, we came up with the recommendation and the best alternative for TD, which will be to restoring trust and compliance that is essential for TD's long-term stability and growth. So the recent money laundering scandal has significantly damaged the bank's reputation, as you heard, and even blocked major strategic deals, such as the failed acquisition of First Horizon. If TD doesn't address its anti-money laundering system and governance structure, any future tech upgrades or business model change could have faced regulatory resistance. It aligns with stakeholders' theory by protecting the interest of shareholders, employees, customers, and the broader community. It also helps mitigate legal, operational, and reputational risk. Now, how does that impact the operation in the industry? It will impact it by reducing exposure to fines and sanctions. It also can do strengthening in internal ethics and risk management, and cleaning the path for future strategic initiatives. And by prioritizing compliance, new TD position itself for outstandable growth and renewal credibility. And now I'll pass it to Elmi to continue the rest.
Thank you, Mark. I'll be discussing the implementation plan, the recommendation, and how we're going to put it into action. Okay, so in the first year, our plan is to audit all the anti-money laundering failures, then find and organize these failings based on the severity, track the levels of misconduct and negligence of the management and the staff. We plan to restructure senior leadership with a focus on meeting compliances, and terminate and replace staff based on necessity and the severity of their infractions. We make changes at all levels of the company, including senior management and the board of directors, also frontline staff, based on how the level of their infractions. We also want to appoint a new chief compliance officer with the necessary experience in the oversight of fraudulent activities. We want to remodel and restructure our anti-money laundering protocols and invest in new AML technologies to lessen future liabilities. We also want to update the code of conduct to reflect these policy updates and hire independent compliance monitors. We will also begin the hiring process of the replacement for laid off workers and update our hiring practices to ensure a greater emphasis on ethics. We will also improve training process of incoming trainees to encourage a culture of transparency, ethics, and compliance. Within the second year, we plan to integrate new business systems that improve transaction monitoring in our operation, train staff on the importance of compliance and ethics, and increase the frequency and scope of said training, introduce whistleblower protections that encourage employees to report suspicious activities. In the third year, we will introduce transparency initiatives and campaigns aimed at building trust with customers, regulators, and investors to signal cultural and operational transformation. And then 4 to 5 years in, we will we will track the performance of new staff used to replace terminated employees, monitor the rate at which AML failures are occurring to see if the measures taken have led to a decline, observe progress of transparency initiative and its effect on the public perception, and decide which measures must be stopped, which will continue, and which need to be modified. I'd like to pass it over to Alejandro for the conclusion or the summary.
Thank you, Omar. So yeah, just a brief summary of the presentation and TD. TD is a great example of a bank that has achieved longevity and has changed the competitive industry through diversification since its start in 1855. And they have evolved to meet the needs of many financial service markets. Despite some of the issues with TD, they still remain one of the top banks in Canada and in America. So hopefully with our recommendations and implementation plan, TD can overcome these setbacks and continue its path of growth. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. Any questions? Thank you.